even though the chances of winning the lottery are tiny, it's a huge sum of money. And sometimes in weather, that's the way it is with rain chances. It's like winning the rain lottery. You can really cash in big time. So, James, the fact that those are being diverted to Columbia, I was just telling somebody, for some reason, a lot of flights get diverted down to Columbia.
They do.
And I never understood why. I had a friend, and this was a horror story. I could tell you tons of these, but they were coming back from international trip. It was not overseas, but it was down the Caribbean. And they were coming to Charlotte. They got diverted to Columbia. Guess what the problem with that is?
There's no customs at Columbia.
Yes, there was no customs. And so guess what happened? They were trapped on the plane the entire time. So they got diverted to an airport that did not have customs. And when you're coming from overseas, you have to go through customs, obviously, coming back in the United States. So that was a little bit of a nightmare. They got stuck on the plane for hours and hours, and that's always a problem. The biggest issue with these big airports in the Northeast, I'm talking the New York area, so you've got two major airports there, LaGuardia and Kennedy, and you've got two major airports in the D.C. area, Reagan and BWI, which is Baltimore, Washington Airport. All four of those airports are being impacted by storms right now. And think of all the planes that fly through there. So you've got U.S. Air, old U.S. Air, American. I loved U.S. Air, by the way. Who else you got? Southwest goes through Baltimore.
They do.
Who else? Does United go through LaGuardia?
They do a lot of Newark.
Newark, that's the one I'm thinking of. Okay, say Newark would be the other one. So pretty much, I mean, everybody, even Delta has some flights in that part of the country, are all going to be impacted. And if you're at an airport where it's sunny and dry, like right now in Charlotte, and you're wondering, where's my plane? Your plane could have been going through one of those other airports, and that's the trickle-down effect. So the summertime, and we're going to hopefully have a whole show about this. I'm working with the airport right now on some information and content. I'm actually going to do some social media stuff with them about why weather and airports in the summer is so problematic. People, I think, often think, man, winter weather is the worst for traveling, right? Nope. For air travel, it's severe thunderstorms or just thunderstorms in general. They have a huge impact on airport travel. And think about it, it happens during the summer and spring when people are doing the most vacationing and traveling. So again, we'll keep an eye on these storms right now. Nothing severe in our area, but we've had some strong storms to the north and south of us. We'll be keeping an eye on this throughout the evening. Of course, if there are any warnings, we'll break back in. Make sure you're following us on social. Follow me as well, WX Brad, and make sure you stick around because Colin's going to be up here in a minute talking about the news of the day. You might see me jump into a show if we get some of those storms.
All right, welcome to WCNC Plus here inside the Impact Studio. There's been a flurry of news from the NBA over the last couple of days. Obviously, last week we had an awesome draft special on Wednesday. If you haven't watched it, go back on WCNC Plus and check it out with Nick Carboni and a host of other characters. But, man, the Hornets have been wheeling and dealing. And honestly, these last couple of moves could really shore up their roster. Pat Connaughton, even seeing Mason Plumlee coming back. So we'll bring in sports director Nick Carboni. And Nick, man, they've just been going at it in terms of trying to add people to this roster. What are your first thoughts?
Well, Hornets president of basketball operations, Jeff Peterson, has said multiple times since he got here, including this offseason, that the franchise is not going to skip steps to get where it ultimately wants to go. And where it ultimately wants to go is a stated goal of premier franchise in the NBA, but also to the playoffs consistently, not just 1 year and out the next year. So he says they don't want to skip steps. And what he didn't say is that they don't want to take steps forward. And I think that's what you're seeing here. The team won only 19 games last season. The way the NBA is structured with the draft lottery and where you land if you have a bad season or where you're, likely to land, a lot of teams would look at that and say, let's win 15 next year and get another top 5 pick. But the Hornets are clearly looking to at least start to put some pieces in place around LaMelo Ball, around Brandon Miller, and then hope for their health this season to get a true evaluation of where they are at and what types of moves they need to make next year. And the other thing I will say about these recent moves with Jeff Peterson, including on draft night, is if you don't got picks coming with players, don't call me. Because there are so many times when you look at the report initially and it says player X and player Y, and also 2 picks or 1 pick or whatever it is, and you're thinking, okay, the Hornets are sending a pick back. But it's always been the Hornets are getting picks and acquiring more picks. And I believe they entered draft night with 8 first-round picks over 6 seasons. So they continue to add to that cachet. This particular transaction that we're talking about for guard forward Pat Connaughton from the Bucks, they get 2 second-round picks, future seconds from Milwaukee, and all they part with is Vasilije Micic, who they traded for on draft night as a salary match, a guy who used to play here and was never going to play here this season under head coach Charles Lee. So they essentially took a guy that wasn't going to play here, flipped him for a plug-and-play role player in Connaughton, and got 2 future second-round picks. And people look and say, oh, they're for 2031, 2032. Well, those chips are probably going to be cashed sooner than that.
Yeah, I mean, they have really added a lot of. I mean, Connaughton himself, he adds another depth in terms of shooter, right? Does plays pretty good defense as well. And then you cannot forget the 2 picks from draft night. I mean, honestly, this team, although it seems to be young, as you said, as long as the injury bug doesn't bite, could have a real chance to make some noise, don't you think?
There was so much pressure on LaMelo Ball here and he came in here in 2020 in that draft as the 3rd overall pick. Everybody knew he could pass. Everybody kind of assumed he couldn't shoot. Well, it turns out he can, but they had to rely on that, and he relied on it a little too much in the last couple of seasons when he's been healthy. Now you've got Con Knippel. Hopefully Liam McNeely can spread the floor. Pat Connaughton, a guy that can spread the floor. Colin Sexton was a massive pickup via trade over the weekend that also included a pick coming to Charlotte, and they part ways with center Yusuf Nurkic. Center is now a position of clear need. If you're over 6 feet tall and living in the city of Charlotte, you may get a call from your Charlotte Hornets right now. We can talk about that in a bit. But point is, they want guys to surround LaMelo Ball, to be able to spread the floor and to make plays with the ball and off the ball for him. And it all leads up to a very important season for this franchise and franchise player to see if it's going to work beyond 25 and 26.
I know you haven't seen these guys play yet with this new roster, but just looking at them on paper, what are some weaknesses and some strengths that you're already seeing that jump out at you?
Yeah, so I mean, start with the negative. Really, when you go offense in round 1 on draft night, you are eschewing kind of the defensive possibilities and improvement that you could have made. Now, if Philadelphia hadn't selected VJ Edgecombe with the 3rd overall pick, I almost have no doubt that the Charlotte Hornets would have taken him because he's got offensive upside, but already comes in as a really good defender. So when you're taking somebody like Con Knippel, he's somebody that people say, offensively, he can do it all. defensively, can he get to kind of a baseline in the NBA to where he's not getting picked on all that much? Liam McNeely, a little bit of the same thing, although he does bring more length. Those guys are coming in here for their ability to shoot the basketball. Their second day is more defensive minded. So round 2, they pick up Sion James from Duke, who basically had the same role of the Blue Devils that the Hornets are going to ask him to do, and maybe even less shooting. Sion James is going to come in and be a very strong, big-bodied guard forward who they hope they can stick on another team's really good scorer. Ryan Kalkbrenner, 7'1", 7'5" or 6" wingspan. He's a guy they hope can protect the rim because now Mark Williams is gone, Nurkic is gone. So defense is definitely going, and even bringing in Colin Sexton, a 6'3" guard, it's not going to be your best defensive player. So they likely may struggle on defense again as the roster is currently constructed, but offensively they should be able to hang with teams and not. They had these quarters, Colin, where they would have a good first quarter, and then in the second quarter they would get beat 35-15.
Yeah.
So they're hopefully going to close that gap a little bit and win some more games, keep more games competitive.
You're talking about the center position, obviously highly needed for a lot of teams, especially for the Hornets. There's been some names thrown out like Luke Cornett from the Boston Celtics. You got DeAndre Ayton from the Trailblazers, and even Brook Lopez from the Bucks, who still seems to be really making an impact in games. Obviously, getting up there in terms of age. What do you think about those 3 guys, or is there anybody else that you think that the Hornets might go after in the next couple of days?
Yeah, this center market has been fascinating because we've started talking about guys like Luke Cornett, kind of a second, third center option for the Celtics, like he was Bill Walton, and he's getting paid, more than maybe some think he should. So he's signed. Lopez, I think, has landed. And the other part of this is, in Charlotte, and former GM Mitch Kupchak, who still has a role with the team, always kind of indicated like Charlotte isn't a big free agent destination because they haven't won. They're trying to change that, but what you're seeing is Jeff Peterson can control who he drafts. He can control who he trades for. Yeah. He can't control as much the other options that these players have. And when you're a Brook Lopez, you want to go to a contender. When you're a Luke Cornett and you've won a championship, you want to go to a contender. Charlotte's not viewed as that yet. And with DeAndre Ayton, I'm not sure he fits kind of the locker room they're clearly putting together. Not saying he's a bad guy at all, but I think he can kind of be a drain on the positivity and leadership component that is kind of being built in this locker room right now. So I'm just not sure it fits in the locker room on the court, although he's a big name and it would be a big splash. So what they did was they went and got Mason Plumlee, who's played here before. He was traded by the Hornets to the Clippers, landed with the Suns, as most former Hornet centers now are, Nick Richards, Mark Williams. So he does. I'm a baseball fan.
Yeah.
In baseball, they say professional hitter. A guy you've heard of before but isn't a big flashy guy that you can send in for a couple at-bats a game, and he can get some singles. Mason Plumlee can get you some singles. Every once in a while he'll crack a double, and he'll get a double-double. But he also plays really well with LaMelo Ball offensively. And I think, I was watching some videos back of that, and it reminded me, okay, this is somebody they know who can come in and they know can, operate in the system, play with LaMelo, and that's very important. And back to Pat Connaughton, we were talking briefly off camera, won a championship with the Bucks.
Right.
His three-point percentage has gone down a little bit. Yeah. He's 32 now. But important connection here, he played under assistant coach with the Bucks, Charles Lee, who's now the Hornets head coach. So a lot of familiarity there. And like I said, when you're giving up just Vasilicic, who wasn't going to play here this year, to get a veteran like that, I think that's good business.
Well, I hate to start already talking about depth, but we saw in the finals how depth played into both of those teams being able to pull people off the bench. I know that the Hornets are focused on trying to find their starting 5 that really gel, but that seems to be like the next focus is going to be bringing in guys to help them with that depth, which it seems like they're doing that already. Where do you think that will go in terms of a priority rank in where Charles Lee might go after over the next couple of months?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think they're done. They have this massive cachet of picks and now a roster that is they're doing some number crunching, so there are some expendable players as well as a lot of second-round picks. I'm not sure you're going to send off a first-round pick unless it's for a big name, maybe another big-name center and a sign-and-trade instead of the free agent market. But, looking at the starting lineup, it's almost like we immediately slotted in Con Knipple to the two-guard spot.
Right.
Brandon Miller at the 3, LaMelo at the 1, obviously. But now it's like, oh, Colin Sexton's here. Could he start some games? Could he start the beginning of the season at that 2 spot, playing off LaMelo ball? And then beyond that, yes, you're adding Pat Connaughton. The center rotation is going to at least have experience with Mason Plumlee, Moussa Diabate, who earned a full-time NBA contract last year with the team. Grant Williams hopefully comes back soon from a devastating injury as well. And I'm forgetting a center somehow already. But I'm looking at Jeb because he's the sports guy. Kalkbrenner, the guy they just drafted. So they're going to rely on him to come in and rotate in as well. It's going to be kind of center by committee as it stands here at 7:08 or whatever it is on July 1st. But as I said, they have the pieces and the space to not be totally done there.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure how big of a signing they'll make or big of a trade they'll make.
Yeah, I don't know how we could forget about Kalkbrenner. He's 7'1", so.
Yeah, but depth is certainly going to be better than it was last year. Overall talent, overall shooting, overall depth, already better on paper than it was last year, because you saw when those injuries happened to key guys, and the team only had 6 games with its supposed starting lineup last year.
Right.
Things fell apart very quickly, and you were getting a lot of players in there at a position, a little bit in over their head. And they gained experience, and Charles Lee, the coach, was able to coach them up more often than not, but they were losing a lot of those close games because they didn't have their star players or experienced players in.
Yeah. Well, two different issues as well, really striking this team as well, as on-ball creation and shooting, right? We've seen a lot of those situations, I think, get better in the last couple of seasons. Unfortunately, with the injuries, I don't think, they're where they need to be. But it seems like with Kalkbrenner, he's got a shot as well. And some of the other guys we just talked about, it seems like those two issues could have been shored up as well. What are you thinking about,
Yeah, I mean, in terms of playmakers, LaMelo Ball, he's your prime playmaker.
Right.
So as long as he's healthy, he is the engine that makes it go. Like I said, when he was out of the lineup because of injury or when he just needed a break off the floor, the offense, he drives Lamborghinis, so it went from being like a Lambo to my old Ford Focus that I just traded in. It was very, very apparent that things were just not the same.
Yeah.
Now you bring in Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton was one of the best scorers for an NBA franchise for the last 2 seasons in Utah. He has been a scorer since he got into the league. I remember the Hornets were taking a serious look at drafting him and worked him out. He's a proven scorer and playmaker in the NBA. Brandon Miller, he was ascending in year 2. Some efficiency thing. He was being asked to do a lot of that, maybe early, a lot of ball handling, because they didn't have as many guys that could shoulder that load, but they also wanted him to progress in his career. Hopefully he was able to develop, even though he missed some time, especially towards the end of last year, but he's a guy that you're going to be relying on to create his own shot, create some action. So listen, it could be better. Other NBA teams have far more talented and more playmakers than the Charlotte Hornets do, no doubt. But I think you've got some guys you feel good about. Pat Connaughton, I'm not calling him like a big-time playmaker, but he can do some things with the ball in his hands. He's not just a shooter. They are going to rely on Con Knipple to do a lot more than shoot. I'm not sure ball handling is in his future or anything like that, but he can certainly make the right play. And I think that's the most important part of this is, you have a lot of guys that are high IQ, whether it's through experience or whether it's because they just are that way at 18, 19 years old in this draft, coming from the programs they come from, that Charles Lee, I think, will have a lot more fun this year coaching than he had with last year's roster, and a lot of inexperience and a lot of players who had to learn how to make the right plays and more often than not did not.
Last thing, man, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. It seems like they're kind of building this up with Charles Lee, obviously, is the leadership in the locker room and the maturity, right? We've been talking about this and looking at over the last couple of years with certain players, and I think the maturity level is getting better. A lot of people are stepping up. You talked about Brandon Miller. Who do you think might be an early favorite for, they don't do necessarily captains, but that leader, that voice in the locker room to kind of be stable that I know this franchise is looking for? I mean, you would think it would hopefully be, LaMelo. Could it be one of these rookies as well?
I think Brandon Miller is, if I'm running the franchise, I want Brandon Miller to rise into that role.
Okay.
And I think he was on his way to doing that, and had he played a full season last year, likely would have kind of assumed that role towards the end of his second season. I think he's the player they have with the most potential outside of LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball just hasn't shown yet the vocal leadership capabilities. Some guys just don't do that. Yeah. Now, when he plays the way he plays, when he's healthy, he leads that way. He can help you win that way, offensively. I think right now it's probably Miles Bridges, which is always an interesting conversation, considering, the allegations against him, the pleading no contest to the felony domestic violence, and the long suspension he had. But really, he has been on the floor, and I qualify it with on the floor, and maybe in the locker room, the Hornets' best leader, saying the right things to the team, saying the right things to the media about what we need to do. However, and we saw this with some pretty high caliber coaches, Steve Clifford and James Borrego before Charles Lee, just because the message is there doesn't mean it's resonating. So who can have the message resonate, and a lot of that has to do with who's receiving the message. So I think this draft class was a clear signal of, like, we need guys who want to play the right way, want to operate as professionals, want to win, hate to lose, more importantly. Yeah. So I think Brandon Miller is the first name that jumps out to me as the guy they want to assume that role, but I think Con Knipple could be right behind him after a year.
And there's been so much action, not just by the Hornets franchise, but really all over the NBA, which we obviously always expect. So I think a lot of folks are looking forward to the season, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, I think you have excitement right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's health going into the season, which has been an issue, and then consistently throughout the season. But I think, as I said, what they have on paper right now is clearly better than what it was last season.
Reason to be excited.
Yep.
All right, Nick, thank you so much, our sports director, taking some time out of his busy day to join WCNC Plus. Nick, thank you, man. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
All right, let's get back to some other things we've been monitoring. The One Big Beautiful Bill making its way through Capitol Hill, passed the Senate narrowly earlier today, and is now inside the House Rules Committee, which has been really at length discussing and debating this bill. The next crucial step for this legislation will be changes potentially being made, amendments being added by the House. However, we have heard numerous representatives from the House say different things. Some believe that it will be passed. Others believe they don't have the votes for the big, beautiful bill to pass. So we'll go to the House Rules Committee right now in session.
This bill could raise energy costs for households by hundreds of dollars annually. And according to experts, we'd lose more than half of all new grid capacity planned over the next 10 years, an extinction-level event for the clean energy jobs of tomorrow. My amendment puts a stop to these disastrous rollbacks. We cannot allow this all-out assault on America's middle class to go forward. Before coming to here today, I answered calls from constituents imploring me to fight this bill, some in tears about what this bill will do to their family. Our constituents are living paycheck to paycheck and are working tirelessly just to survive. Our job is to fight for them, not billionaires. I urge my colleagues to support these common sense amendments. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you very much. I'm going to defer asking any questions for the time being. Mr. Scott, do you have any questions? You have none. Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you all for being here. I think this is important. I think it's important for people to see that their representatives are demanding better from this institution. Mr. Mullen, I think you have a good idea, and I don't think it's going to make it in this package, but I'd like to work with you on that. And to everybody else, thanks for coming here to defend people's health care and people's, food benefits and their basic rights. I think you mentioned the nobody likes this bill. But I like that. Let me read you a quote. I wonder if you could guess where this came from. Quote, "I don't like cuts, and we're going to have to see the final version." Any guesses who that was? That was Donald Trump today about his big, beautiful bill. That was him being questioned by press before he went to Florida for his press conference. He has no clue what the hell is in this bill, right? And he certainly doesn't. He says he's against the Medicaid cuts. I mean, this is like the biggest hit to Medicaid in history. I mean, but I just want to say one thing. I don't know if you were here for the previous panel, but toward the end, I found it offensive to hear the rationale for the cuts in food benefits and the cuts in Medicaid. The chairman of the Budget Committee, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and one of our members here, of course, they talk about fraud, waste, and abuse, but don't get specific about it. But then they went into this line about, this is all about going after illegal immigrants. And we were told that, that all these illegal immigrants were somehow on Medicaid and on SNAP. The bottom line is undocumented immigrants are not eligible to enroll in federally funded coverage, including Medicaid, CHIP, or Medicare, or to purchase coverage through the ACA marketplaces. They're forbidden. The federal government saves $0 from kicking undocumented people off of Medicaid because zero federal funds go to cover them. Only some states that are being penalized by this bill cover them with their own state funds. Nearly 16 million, or 92% of people losing coverage due to Republicans' health care cuts are American citizens. These are people who are here lawfully. And so, when fraud, waste, and abuse doesn't work, they throw out illegal immigrants. Also told that, of the 7.8 million people without insurance in 2034 on this bill, 4.8 million are people who are able to work but who refuse to work. Again, that's not, they come out and talk about the CBO report. That's not what the CBO report says. CBO's report states that these are able-bodied adults between the ages of 19 and 64 who have no dependents and who do not meet the Republicans' red tape requirement. Ms. Randall talked about all the red tape. All these new requirements, they don't just take your word for it. You got to go through all this red tape and satisfy the federal government that, in fact, you're doing what they claim they want you to do. Research shows that the able-bodied population Republicans are targeting are typically women at the older end of their working years. They are not young men on a couch playing video games, as has been falsely claimed. Furthermore, evidence shows that as much as 4.8 million Americans losing coverage would occur among people who work or should qualify for exemption, but nevertheless lose coverage due to red tape. More than 92% of the people relying on Medicaid are already working. They're in school or caregiving or unable to work due to illness or disability. The populations that you're all up here advocating for live complicated lives, and throwing more hurdles, for them to have to jump over, will just mean they go without health care or they go without nutrition assistance. And that's not the kind of America that, I want us to be. I mean, I want us to be able to be there for everybody, and to lift up people who are vulnerable and who are struggling. And I'm getting calls as well, like all of you, from, not only, elected officials, but regular citizens who are like, these Republicans, they don't understand my life. They have no idea what I'm going through. And I don't fit any of their categories. I could be an able-bodied adult, who's taking care of, an elderly person in my house, and somehow I lose my SNAP benefits if I'm not at work, but I can't afford long-term care to someone to check in on my mother or father or grandmother or grandfather. I mean, that's why, some of us objected to the process that got us here. I mean, this is like rushed. There's no, 4th of July, nothing happens on the 4th of July other than the fact that Trump wants to throw another party for himself. He didn't even know what the hell's in the bill. and yet we're rushing this through. Nobody knows the implications of what's in this, what the Senate sent over to us. But we do know that a lot of people are going to get hurt. And again, the Republicans spent so much time demonizing struggling families, and yet they say nothing about the fact that, Jeff Bezos is getting a tax cut, even though he could spend, notwithstanding the fact that he could afford to spend $50 million on his wedding. We talk about fraud, waste, and abuse. Because someone in the SNAP program might, instead of getting $2 per meal, might get $2.50 per meal. But, there's no accountability at the Pentagon. I said this morning, when the last time the Pentagon, the Department of Defense passed an audit? Never. I mean, not a peep. But if it comes to food or health care, that's fair game. And again, I mean, I want you to know how important it is that you are here. I think people are watching this debate, and they are seeing who's on their side and who's not on their side. And I said this morning, and I'll repeat it again. I do believe that this is probably one of the most dangerous, disastrous bills in modern history, because it impacts the stuff that people care most about. I mean, their health and well-being. And we'll see what happens. But again, I appreciate you being here, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Ms. Scanlon.
Thank you. And I, too, want to thank all of the witnesses. I mean, the conversations you're talking about with your constituents sound like the conversations I've been having, whether, it's someone I run into on the street or someone in the grocery store. We had a town hall on Sunday. And, people are really concerned. And I really appreciate the thoughtful amendments that you're offering, because they really highlight the vision that Democrats are putting forward for the country and the contrast to what we're seeing from the Republicans. I mean, you're talking about fairness for everyone. You're talking about what our families need to thrive, what our kids need to thrive. You're talking about a government that levels the playing field or invests in Americans rather than putting the thumb on the scale for the wealthy and the well-connected. Talking about a government that's looking to meet the challenges of the future rather than propping up failed theories like trickle-down economics of the past. So really appreciate the thoughtful amendments, the words about, the families with kids with disabilities. I heard a lot about that over this weekend. The concerns about veterans and others who are going to go hungry. It all resonates. It's all true. And I just really appreciate your coming forward with these amendments. Thank you.
Mr. Neguse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all our witnesses, and I certainly agree with the ranking member and Representative Scanlon regarding the eloquence that all of you have demonstrated with respect to the amendments that you've suggested, and I think expose the cruelty of this bill that I think will have disastrous consequences, certainly for all of our constituents and ultimately, I believe, all Americans. I had, I guess, just one question that, or perhaps maybe it might be a few questions, for the gentleman from Maryland. Because while you are new to Congress, you may be surprised to learn that you and the chairwoman here have something in common, which is that both of you come from states, you have the privilege of representing states, that have very similar error rates with respect to SNAP. And I don't know if you were here previously, and you hopefully heard some of the discussion that we had about this absurd provision that Americans are now learning about, that apparently Senate Republicans put into this bill regarding SNAP, ostensibly to get the bill across the finish line, to get Senator Murkowski's vote. And I just kind of want to walk through this, because my sense is that your amendment attempts to equalize everything. It would essentially remove this deal that was made in the Senate from the bill. And if your amendment were not ruled in order, I want to kind of get a sense as to how this bill will work in practice. So, in Maryland, the SNAP error rate right now is 8.85%. In North Carolina, it's 8.11%. So under this bill, right, assuming it's enacted into law, the state of Maryland and the state of North Carolina have really only three choices. One, raise taxes to essentially pay for what is a cost share that's never been imposed on states before. 2, cut SNAP funding and force countless vulnerable citizens to no longer have access to food assistance. Or 3, this new option, which is increase your error rate above 13%. So basically overpay SNAP or underpay, you choose. But make sure that your program is not working appropriately. And if you can get to 13%, you can join the 10 states that have such poor error rates that they're exempted from any kind of cost share for 4 years, including the state of Georgia, Mr. Scott.
Actually, only a Democrat state would actually intentionally increase their error rates. A Republican state would work to reduce them.
Oh, well, that's fascinating. If that's the case,
Not an option you mentioned.
well, if that's the case, and I didn't yield to the gentleman, but in any event.
But you did forget that
I
one.
hear you. I will simply say this. If that's the case, then you could just remove them entirely. Why include these 10 states as part of this deal if apparently Republican states are so committed to reducing the error rate on their own volition? Why don't you have that cost share start tomorrow? Clearly, that's not the case. Clearly, Republicans in the U.S. Senate. What was that?
I'd be fine with the.
Then you should vote against the bill. You have an opportunity tomorrow to make that clear. Well, that's unfortunately, I assume that that'll be fine for the people of Georgia because, as I said, they're exempted from this, so they don't have to worry about that. But the people of North Carolina do, as do the people of Maryland. So I don't know if the gentleman wants to opine on that.
I thank you for the question, Mr. Neguse, and that's why we are offering this amendment. We are offering the chair and her colleagues the opportunity to not penalize the great citizens of North Carolina, to not penalize the residents of Maryland. We can create an even playing field where all states are in the same space as it relates to SNAP, where all states have the opportunity to work towards improving our error rates and not being penalized and, in fact, incentivized to go in the opposite direction. I think that is a terrible thing to be incentivizing. I thought your conversation with Mr. Roy earlier was very instructive when he agreed. And again, I'll enter in the record as well from earlier. I want to enter in the record that there's one time that I'm agreeing with Mr. Roy as well, that this is not sound policy. This will hurt our states. And so I would encourage this committee to both vote for the amendments. I don't know how you rule it in order if you're advancing a bill that already has these requirements in it. So I would encourage this committee to rule the amendments in order, adopt the amendments, and then tank this bill because it will take away those benefits for hungry kids.
Hear, hear. Couldn't have said it better myself. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neguse. Ms. Leisure-Fernandez, you're recognized.
I, too, want to thank each of you because what we are engaged in right now is an effort to make sure that the American public knows that this time around, House Republicans are stealing Americans' health care in the light of day. They are brazen about it and unashamed about it. Now, they are fighting among themselves about it, but there are only a few that are willing to have the courage of their convictions to vote no. Result a no vote and then a retirement in the Senate, right? The question is, what will they do in the House? Because we know that all of you have been approached by Republican colleagues who don't like some aspect of this bill. Some have told us today, Representative Norman does not like the increased deficit. And he said, I'm going to vote no on the rule. I'm going to vote no on the bill. We'll see if he's one of those congressmen who are not caving again. Hopefully, he'll stick to his word. I wish we would hear from those moderates who say, I'm going to vote against it because it's going to kill the rural hospitals. And so thank you for bringing that. I wanted to ask a couple, and before I go to the questions, I think there's a real difference in your point about giving away things to one state for a vote, but not treating everybody the same. I think we have an obligation as legislators to see when our communities face similar hardships that we need to pass laws. It's the United States of America that benefit everybody equally. And Representative Moreland, I am pleased, as you can imagine, that New Mexico is included in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. there are many aspects of this bill that many Democrats support. That is righting an injustice. But what is sad is that Guam and other communities were not included. And you know that the coalition did not ask for that. The coalition recognized that the harms from the radiation from our nuclear program felt by all American citizens need to be treated equally. Thank you for making sure that you came and made sure that the American public knew that it wasn't right. And this is one of those amendments that would be wonderful it could get in. I mean, it's your Republican colleague who's asking for this, right? And in fact, most of the compensation for those victims of radiation are actually Republican states and Republican districts. New Mexico is one of the few that's not. But anyway, a special plea that his get in because it's the right thing to do. But I wanted to ask Representative Randall, you were pointing out some of the horrible things that have been said about people who receive Medicaid and people who receive SNAP, because they are working. And this is going on. I wanted to read you this, that Tommy Tuberville, one of those other awful quotes, Senator Tommy Tuberville said, open quote, "These inner city rats live off the federal government," close quote. Do you know family and friends and community members who receive Medicaid benefits, who receive SNAP, who receive Pell Grants?
Yes, I do. And, you know, while a lot of my district is rural, I also have the city of Tacoma. And I got a message from a mom this morning who is the twin sister of a sibling with disabilities similar to my own sisters, and the mom of a young boy with really complex disabilities. And, you know, he's relied on Medicaid and other state and federal subsidies for a long time. And today she messaged me. She said, "I can't stop crying. I can't look at Owen, her son. I had to leave him and his nurse at home. I can't imagine a life where I have to do it all by myself again. Now with my disabled sister living with us too. My heart is broken and I'm so tired. Please keep fighting for us." And I think that exhaustion from parents of children with disabilities, of siblings who care for loved ones with disabilities, you know, folks who are taking care of their own parents as they age, that exhaustion and trying to do all the paperwork, get to all the appointments, make sure that you are keeping the person you love cared for and safe, and checking all of the boxes and cutting through all the red tape so that you can get them the support that they are entitled to. It's all exhausting. And to have debated here in our nation's capital whether or not you even deserve those benefits that you work so hard for breaks my heart.
Right, and to call them rats, to say that they are, half of them are engaging in fraud and the other half don't want to work, when they are these children and they are these families and they are people we all know. I mean, I would ask the entire panel, including Representative Moreland, do you all know somebody personally, a family member, a friend, who has used SNAP, who has used Medicaid, who has used Pell Grants? Absolutely. How about the audience?
All right, we're going to cut into this and continue to listen in on the discussion and debate with the House Rules Committee over the big, beautiful bill. But the president has had a pretty action-packed day, being with Florida officials as they give him a tour of Alligator Alcatraz, as he has dubbed it, down in Florida. We'll go to his comments a little bit earlier today.
Translators and non-English speaking work, federal government, the Justice Department. It's more than twice the cost of maintaining the United States Justice Department, what we're spending on translation and other things to help. In total, the average illegal alien costs American taxpayers an estimated $70,000. That's each. $70,000. I think that number is even low. If you care about balancing the budget, the single most impactful step we can take is to fully reverse the Biden migration invasion. One of the worst invasions we've ever had. We've never had an invasion like this. We've had invasions, but we've taken care of them. We've never had an invasion like this, and it's with us. And we have some very bad people out there looking to do big harm. That's why the one big, beautiful bill includes funding for 3,000 new Border Patrol officers and 10,000 new ICE agents. And I've gotten to know the Border Patrol and ICE very well. Unlike Kamala, she was the border czar, but she never saw the border. She never made one phone call. She was some border czar. She would have been some president. Probably would have been slightly better than Biden, though. I had to run against both of them, you know? The one guy, it's like a fighter. You knock out the one guy who's doing badly, then they put somebody else in. But fortunately, she was a stiff also. Otherwise, I would have been very angry. I would have been extremely angry. The heroes of ICE will also help round up and remove members of the savage drug cartels, which are coming back into our country. And we got them out. Now, some of them came back in. We just got them out again. And that's going to be a vicious cycle. But these are foreign gangs. They're horrendous people, killers, that have infiltrated our territory, including 8 which we have designated as foreign terrorist organizations, which gives us a lot more power for speed and getting them out much easier. And we had a great court victory, as you know, on Friday that allows us to do what we have to do from the Supreme Court of the United States. In 5 months, my administration has already arrested over 2,700 members of the murderous Venezuelan gang known as Tren de Aragua, including a pack.
Just got some breaking news, and we're going to cut into the president really quickly. We were talking about, right, the front court depth. Well, the back court is getting a little bit more depth as well. Nick Carboni coming in real quick to break some news for us. Sounds like we got a guy who's going to be coming back to Charlotte, and we've seen him play before.
Yeah, Trey Mann is somebody that the Hornets acquired in a trade from Oklahoma City year before last. And he really had gotten lost in the shuffle on a Thunder squad, chock with young talent, came to the Hornets, was able to showcase his talent a little more, but only 13 games of it last year before a back injury sidelined him for what would end up being the rest of the season. So he was a restricted free agent entering this free agency period. Basically, the Hornets' option was to extend him a 1-year, what they call a qualifying offer that other teams could match or try to outdo. But the Hornets declined that offer. So a lot of people thought, okay, well, they've drafted Con Knippel, and then they went out and traded for Colin Sexton. So is Trey Mann the odd man out in that equation? And a lot of Hornets fans would have been disappointed by that because of all the promise he has shown. Well, we can now tell you, according to Shams Charania of ESPN, and we'll work on independently confirming it, that Trey Mann, the qualifying offer was 1 year for $6.9 million. So why would the Hornets decline such a cheap deal for such a player with so much promise? Well, he has now signed a 3-year deal for $24 million. Basically, he stays 3 years at $8 million per year instead of staying 1 year at about $7 million. And if he had a good year, he could have proven himself to get a big contract on the open market as an unrestricted free agent after that. So they basically wanted to obviously keep Trey Mann around longer for a lower rate, and that's what they've succeeded in doing. And it just adds to that roster crunch like we were talking about. But if you're the Hornets, that's a great position to be in. Oh, we have too many players that, we think could contribute or start. That's a great spot to be in. Trey Mann had proven already to be a very, very good player off the bench for the Hornets, and that may be the role he's suited best for.
Well, we were just talking about depth. That gives them some depth. If they have any other injuries, this gives them a guy that they know that they've seen before. You were touching on a little bit what it means for Colin Sexton, this trade for Trey Mann. I mean, would you put these guys on the same court at the same time? Probably not, right?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of different combinations you can have, and I think that Colin Sexton is somebody that runs point for you off the bench, and whether that's Trey Mann next to him or Con Knippel next to him, I think that makes you feel a whole lot better than some of the lineups you were putting out there last year. And I also think Colin Sexton can start off of LaMelo Ball. So he's versatile enough in that way to do both. But Trey Mann is somebody that could probably fluctuate between playing with that starting five, playing with the second unit, but also, always kind of being a scoring threat, which is what he became in his abbreviated time here in Charlotte, and time that people, including the Hornets, obviously want to see a lot more of.
Yeah. Well, our own insider here, Nick Carboni, giving us a little bit of behind the scenes with Trey Mann signing a new deal right here in Charlotte. Anything else that I'm missing, Nick, that you think we should tell folks about?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is just, it's kind of coming in drips and drops, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday we got the Mason Plumlee news, not a big splash. The Pat Connaughton trade made a little bit bigger of waves, if you will, and Trey Mann, I think, was the thing that Hornets fans were kind of, not worried about with all the new additions they made, but a lot of people in this fan base really like what Trey Mann could become, and he's still a very young player. I mean, he is only 24 years old, just turned 24, so he'll be 25 towards the end of next season. A guy that could be part of this franchise for a long time, and it's nice to also have a guy that, you can count on in a role and embraces a role, and that's kind of what Trey Mann does off the bench. He reminds people of a lot of NBA players of a previous generation who came off the bench, were able to provide a scoring spark, were able to provide a lot of athleticism. Trey Mann has all of that. We'll just see how the back injury responds. His agency came out a week or so ago and said, Trey's good. Trey's 100% and he's ready. Now, you take that with a grain of salt because it's from his agency and it comes on the eve of free agency.
Right.
But it appears the Hornets have now done kind of their research. They've maneuvered the roster and cap space around to where they want it. They can easily fit this in. It's not a high cost, especially if he starts to outperform the contract right away. And as I said, getting him for 3 years at $8 million per season instead of having him play 1 year on a $7 million contract and then being able to test the market for a lot more if he has a good year, could wind you up with a very team-friendly contract. The other thing with Colin Sexton, is he is on an expiring deal.
Yeah.
So too is having trouble remembering all the trades now, Pat Connaughton.
Yes.
So expiring deals are some of the most valuable things in the NBA to have because you can send those to another team for a short-term rental and then they're off the books, or send them to anybody who wants to get $19 million off the books next year, or you do. So if the season starts going south towards the deadline or isn't where they want it to be, or they don't think they compete for a playoff spot, they can easily flip those contracts as well. And with Trey Mann around for 3 years, Colin Sexton's deal is up next year. Is this just a one-year thing for Colin Sexton?
Okay.
And Trey Mann is kind of the option there to come off the bench for a long time.
It always comes down to financials, the intricacies, right?
Yep. And Jeff Peterson, the president of basketball operations, he's proven himself in a very small sample size to be very prudent, to have great relationships around the NBA. He has worked with a lot of people in the league at various roles in various places. And, he's very active and engaged in the system of the NBA offseason and which buttons to push and what can I get back. And as I mentioned in our previous segment, he's kind of threading that needle right now of continuing to build assets, but also trying to be more competitive this year than the team was last year.
A confident and quick decision maker.
He is, and he's about 36 years old, I think, still. So no doubt the Hornets' new ownership really took a liking to him and had their eyes on him to take this role, and it is his show now. He is building this roster. Really, he's got a team around him, but good or bad, it's going to be on Jeff Peterson. He's the one behind these moves.
Well, we'll see where it goes, but obviously some of his moves coming to fruition in the near term. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming back.
Maybe
and
I'll come
stopping
back
in.
by
Hey,
9:30
please,
with a center.
Please.
I don't know.
maybe we will. We love to have you back, man. It's great to have your insight. All right, Nick Carboni joining us here on the Live Impact stream. We're going to go back to the Alligator Alcatraz press conference with President Trump.
But I'd probably say the 13,000 is right also. Think of it, 11,888, and more than half of them, they committed more than one murder. So, Ron, many of them are out of here already, but it's still it's a hell of a number to be confronted with. Just this year, ICE agents in Miami have apprehended illegals with arrests for murder, kidnapping, rape, child sexual abuse, and arson, people of the worst order. We're getting these monsters out of the United States, out of Florida, out of all the places that they're in. And on January 20th, I signed an executive order empowering governors and state police to be deputized to enforce federal immigration laws. And Ron's already taken advantage of it. It's a tremendous advantage for the states. Most of them are doing it. Actually, the blue states tend not to do it. Even a couple of them have, though. And I want to express my tremendous thanks to the state of Florida for embracing this opportunity and being a true partner. They've worked so well with the federal government. It's been just a beautiful, beautiful partnership. So, Ron, I'd like to thank you personally. You are my friend, and you'll always be my friend. And we may have some skirmishes even in the future. I doubt it, but I will always come back because we just we have blood that seems to match pretty well. We have a relationship that's been a very strong one for a long period of time, and I appreciate it, very much appreciate it. And also, Secretary Noem, I'd like to have you say a few words. You have been unbelievable, the job you've done. You and our favorite person, Tom Homan, have done, and your whole staff, because it's a lot of people, and Tom acknowledges it all the time. He respects you so much. He respects the staff that you both built. And you're really doing one of the great jobs. And it was great that you could work with Ron in Florida so well, built such a great facility. So please say a few words. Thank you very much.
I don't know if this will work. Well, thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to thank you for putting the safety and the security of the American people first, and the way that you never lose focus on making sure that America stays our priority and that the families that live here get the chance to grow up and to raise their children in communities that are safe and that give them an opportunity to pursue the American dream. This facility here is a fantastic representation of what can happen when all of government works together and when it's accountable to the taxpayers and to the citizens that live here. The President signed an executive order that allowed us to build partnerships with states and with local law enforcement officers, which is exactly how things should function in this country. More power, more authority given to people locally so that they can take control of their own destiny. And so we have already been working under the 287G program to deputize law enforcement officers, whether they be state highway patrol, local sheriff's departments in all of our states, and allow them to go out with our ICE officers, our Border Patrol officers, and make sure that we're getting the worst of the worst off of the streets. We also recognize that as we've been doing that and returning people back to their home countries, that we need detention facilities. We need beds to put them in place so that they can have their due process before they return home. And this facility is exactly what I want every single governor in this country to consider doing with us. What happened to start this conversation was that a young man named Jimmy Percival in my office, my general counsel, who came from Florida and used to work here, called up the Attorney General and the governor and said, hey, what do you think about partnering with us on a detention facility that we could put in place that would allow us to bring individuals there. There's an airstrip close by. You guys volunteered the assets that you have and the connections that you have and worked with Kevin extensively so that we could come here, have their due process given, and return them home to their countries. And in 8 days, this facility has been stood up. And I want everybody to recognize that detention facilities that ICE adheres to is a higher standard than is required at state levels, at local Department of Corrections facilities, sheriff's offices. This is a state-of-the-art facility, air-conditioned, isolated, though, for security purposes, which is very helpful. And I appreciate so many people being willing to work together to make a project like this happen. Right here on this location, we'll have about 3,000 beds. Other location will have another 2,000 beds that will allow us to bring individuals across the country that we are bringing in and incarcerating for violating our laws and immediately get them out of the country as soon as we possibly can. It's exactly what we need to be perpetuating in other states. And what I would say is I want all of you to notice these flyers that we've got, is that everybody who sees these flyers or anybody who sees these news clips should know you can still go home on your own. You can self-deport. If you go on the CBP Home app and go home now, you will get the chance to come back to the United States legally. You will get the chance to come back and do it the right way. If you don't, you may end up here. And you may end up here and being processed, deported out of this country, and never get the chance to come back. That is the consequences of breaking the law in the United States of America. Listen, our job is to uphold the law. This is a country of laws. We have a border now, and because we have a president that cares and recognizes that we need to be a nation of borders and a nation that upholds the law. If you break the law, there's consequences. We will deport you, and you will never get to be a United States citizen. You'll never even get to come back here and work and to pursue the American dream. But if you decide you want to go home now, go home, and we'll help facilitate it. We'll buy your plane ticket. We'll get you there. In fact, I just got back from Panama, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras. Those countries are excited to get their citizens home. They're setting up programs to loan them money to buy houses when they get there, help them with food assistance, get their children educated, scholarships. They want their citizens that are living here in the United States illegally to come home and to be a part of their economy and help their countries grow. So this is a win-win for everyone, and I just want to end, Mr. President, by thanking our law enforcement officers, by thanking our ICE officers and our Border Patrol officers for what they do every day. They are out on the streets, and violence against them has increased over 500% since Trump has gone back into the White House, because he's upholding the law and because a bunch of liberals, socialists, and Marxists are out there lying about what President Trump is doing. President Trump is upholding freedom by what he is doing. The freedom to live safely in this country and to do things legally and to have justice. And because those liberals, and I'm calling out you, CNN, I'm calling you out because you lie every single day about what these operations are. We are going after murderers and rapists and traffickers and drug dealers and getting them off the streets and getting them out of this country because Joe Biden let the worst of the worst come in here. The other day I was talking to some marshals that have been partnering with ICE. They said that they had detained a cannibal and put him on a plane to take him home, and while they had him in his seat, he started to eat himself. And they had to get him off and get him medical attention. These are the kind of deranged individuals that are on our streets in America that we're trying to target and get out of our country because they are so deranged they don't belong here. And they shouldn't be walking the streets with our children. And they shouldn't be living in the communities with our families who just want to grow up, go to job, raise their children to grow up and get a job and to live the American dream. So thank you to all of our law enforcement officers, those in our military that have been helping, our National Guard. Thank you to Governor DeSantis for stepping up and being an example to other governors. I hope my phone rings off the hook from governors calling and saying, how can we do what Florida just did? How can we do exactly what they did? Because we need this big, beautiful bill. We absolutely have to have this big, beautiful bill that has the funding so that we can continue this operation and we can get those bad criminals off of our streets and have the officers to do it so that when they go out on an operation, somebody's got their back. Somebody's got their back, they can do it safely, and they can go home to their families at night too. So this bill needs to pass through Congress so we have the resources at the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that our homeland truly is secure. And Mr. President, thank you for Stephen Miller. I just want to thank you for him. This guy calls me night and day and tells me all of his wise advice and wisdom, but he's a rock star because he loves this country and he's passionate about making sure that nobody is prioritized over an American citizen. We love everybody. We do. We love everybody.
Not everybody.
But, well,
a lot of people.
But we shouldn't be putting people illegally above citizens. We should be making sure that we do things right. And that's what America has always stood for, and we're an example to the rest of the world because we do it right. So, Mr. President, you surround yourself with great people, and I think that's because everybody wants to work for the greatest president that the United States has ever had, and that's President Donald J. Trump.
Thank
so thank
you
you,
very
sir.
much, Chrissy. That's
Thank
so
you for
nice.
your
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I have to say that, you know, when Christie's name was put before me by Tom Homan, by the way, because I wanted him for the border, and somehow I thought that was going to be good in that sort. But he didn't want the upper job, and I said, who do you recommend? Christie Noem. I said, oh, are you kidding? She's great, but she's such a fine, elegant person. He said, sir, she's tough as hell. I said, are you sure? You are tough as hell, I tell you, and you do it in a very nice way, but you are, if you ever saw her ride a horse, she rides a horse like she should be in the rodeo. She's like an unbelievable horse person, and you've done a fantastic job. And Steve Miller would even agree to that. And he likes nobody, by the way. I don't think he likes anybody. And another one we like is Ron. And Ron, would you say a few words, please?
Sure. Well, thank you, Mr. President. Welcome back to Florida. And I think this is the first time you've been back since the events of a couple weeks. So just let me say, as somebody that was serving on active duty in Iraq back in the day, we witnessed the number of our troops that were killed or wounded by the Iranians. We know that they're a militant Islamic regime that was hell-bent on getting nuclear weapons, and under Joe Biden, they were about to get nuclear weapons. And because of your strong actions, those dreams and those ambitions have been reduced to rubble. And I thank you. I know a lot of veterans thank you, and people in Florida really thank you for stepping up and really making a strong, tough, but strong decision. I think we're much safer as a result of that. Now, on the immigration, I think President Trump's election represented the chance for us to finally solve this illegal immigration and border problem once and for all. I knew he was going to do the border, although he did it very quickly and very thoroughly. I think that no one can say that that's been anything but a spectacular success. But then we have the issue of Biden let in how many millions of people? And you had millions that had been in over decades previous to that. You can't have a country if you don't have respect for the rule of law. You can't have a country if foreigners get to decide who comes in. No, we the American people make that decision, who's allowed or not allowed to come into our country. We've seen Europe be overrun by open borders, so we're not going to let that happen here. So when President got elected, I knew that the states had an important role to play in facilitating this really, really historic mission. We're the only state in America, Florida, that requires full cooperation with ICE from all state and local law enforcement entities. And what is the net result of that? We have these agreements for these 287G task force with sheriff's departments, police departments, state agencies, and it's really instrumental in rounding up a lot of really bad people who shouldn't be here. If you look at the number of those full-blown 287G agreements that have been executed around the country, the state of Florida counts for 60% of those. If you look at the number of immigration arrests of illegal aliens on any given day, the arrests happening in Florida constitute between 15 and 20%. Nationwide. So we're all in on this because we understand how important it is to our citizens. It crowds schools, it crowds medical, it crowds housing. Yes, you have illegal alien crime as well, and people want the problem solved. And the only way we're going to solve it is if states like Florida step up and help the president, help Secretary Noem get the job done. Now, this facility here was really in response to us working with DHS and ICE from the time the president got sworn in. And the number one thing they kept coming back to was, you know, Biden decimated the agency. I mean, let's just be clear. You could have illegals in Florida. Biden would just release them. Even when they had notices or they had orders to be removed, Biden wouldn't send them back. So their interior enforcement collapsed under Biden. So they're building it back up. But they're like, we need detention space in order to be able to bring about more deportations. And so what we have here can hold 3,000 now. We have 2,000 facility up at Camp Blanding that we're going to be open, which is our National Guard site. But think about what you have here. They come here, say they already are been ordered to be deported. You drive them 2,000 feet to the runway, and then they're gone. It's a one-stop shop. And this airport that's been here for a long time is the perfectly secure location. It's going to make a big difference. And let me just thank everyone who was involved. We got the call from DHS a little bit more than a week ago. And here we are 8 days later with this facility open. And as soon as Air Force One departs, it'll be swept and it'll be open for business to be able to do. But our goal here is to process them and be able to effectuate their return to their home country. This is the opposite of what they were doing in New York by just putting them up in a hotel and then just letting them stay there indefinitely. No, we want to be able to send back. And when you walk into the processing, the President and I, Secretary Noem, Kevin Guthrie, walk through that initial intake, the first thing you see is information on how to go home on your own. Why would you want to come through Alligator Alcatraz if you can just go home on your own? I think a lot of people are going to make that decision. So you're going to have a lot of deportations that are going to be done by the administration, but I think you're going to have a lot of voluntary as well. So this is a force multiplier for the president's efforts. I would just say and echo what Secretary Noem says. There is no reason why other states can't be doing it. And I know Louisiana, Texas, a couple of them, but we've got if only the red states did this, they would be able to expand their capacity by tens of thousands, maybe 50, 100,000 on a given day. That's how you really start to make a difference. And so we're proud to be able to partner with the Trump administration on that. Mr. President, thanks for coming down. I think you highlighting this is going to move the needle in a big way throughout the country, and I think it's going to help all of us achieve the really big results that I think our voters want to see.
Thank you, Ron. Great job. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity. My name is Kevin Guthrie. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management. And I'd also like to thank President Trump and the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Noem for joining us here today and for their continued support. I want to thank first by thanking the man to my right, and that's Governor Ron DeSantis, whose bold leadership and swift action made this project possible. Make no mistake, this facility would not be standing here without the President, the Secretary, and the Governor's vision and determination to uphold the rule of law. Florida is and will always be a law and order state. Even before the President took office, the Governor made it clear that illegal immigration would not be tolerated in the state of Florida. When the President and the Secretary asked Florida to help, the Governor empowered our state and private partners to work collaboratively and deliver real results on a rapid timeline. The Florida Division of Emergency Management is best known for leading the nation in hurricane response and other natural disasters. We understand how to act fast without bureaucracy in the face of any emergency. Our teams built roads in 8 hours, bridges in 3 days, base camps in 72 hours, and full causeways in 2 weeks. Getting things done quickly, efficiently, and correctly is at the core of our mission. We simply just want to be the best at what we do in the nation. When the Governor called me, and we answered, and we were proud to bring our logistical expertise to the table. We know how to set up base camps for guardsmen, first responders, linemen, volunteers, and other aid sources, and distribute that in a matter of days before a storm. We're able to translate this knowledge to what we did here at Alligator Alcatraz. Florida has put the best teams together who check their individual logos and egos at the door to get this done. Not just for you, Governor, but Mr. President, for you as well. There are over 13 different vendors that came together to get this solved in 8 days. Truly a whole of private sector partnership to get that done. Behind you on these boards, in only 8 days, we have built a fully compliant detention facility with a detainee capacity of up to 3,000 people, with room for additional capacity if you asked us to do so. The detention facility includes over 158,000 square feet of housing and is a fully aluminum frame structure rated for winds of 110 miles an hour or a high-end Category 2 for those people that don't think that we're taking that into consideration. This is Florida, by the way. Power supply is fully redundant with backup generators in place. We've put a staff village here on site with a capacity of 1,000. Our services are hot meal 3 times a day, 24/7 medical facility, pharmacy, air conditioning, access to indoor and outdoor rec yards, legal and clergy support services, laundry. Our security element is over 200 security cameras throughout the facility, more than 28,000 feet of barbed wire, 400 plus security personnel to include 200 men and women, soldiers and airmen underneath Major General John Haas's command as the Adjutant General of Florida. And it's all surrounded, as you pointed out, Mr. President, by 10 miles of beautiful Florida Everglades. Contingencies, as with all state correctional facilities, we have a hurricane plan. We will not wait for a Cat 2. We will follow our normal evacuation procedures as we do for any other facility statewide in our great state of Florida. We have on-site fire and EMS resources so that we do not we don't burden the locals with any type of response. All in all, sir, this has been a perfect state logistics exercise for this hurricane season. Everything we did here in the last 8 days God forbid, if we have a hurricane, we're going to do it again. This was a dress rehearsal for us, and we are ready, willing, and able to support you, sir, the governor, secretary, and everything that you need us to do. Just a week ago, it was a taxiway and a runway, and now it's a fully functioning facility. We are happy to support you, Mr. President, Governor, Secretary.
Fantastic, Joe. Thank you. Byron, please.
There we go. First of all, Mr. President, we all have to thank you for your leadership and for the mandate that the American people gave you to finally secure our borders and to deport criminal illegal aliens and longstanding illegal aliens out of the United States. That is a mandate given to you by the American people. I know Secretary Noem, Stephen Miller, Governor DeSantis, myself, on behalf of the other members of Congress in the Senate, and of course here in Florida, we are behind you 100% in that mission. To the governor, I really appreciate you and commend you for your leadership on this, taking swift, decisive action to building this facility. One of the things that has occurred because of the work you did earlier this year with the legislature is that our sheriffs are out there every single day. They are arresting these criminal aliens in our streets, and they're seeing some backlog in their jails. So this facility primarily goes to address some of that backlog and then to help us fulfill the mission that the president has led us to. So Governor, thank you for your leadership and thank you for your decisive action on this. It really does mean a lot to all the people of Florida, of course the people of the 19th Congressional District. Secretary Noem, I mean, what can I say? The president's right, you're double tough. So we appreciate all your leadership. You and Tom Homan have been doing a great job, and I'm actually going back to DC after this because we have to vote on one big beautiful bill in the House. We have to get that to the president's desk so we can get you the resources that you need to fulfill the mission that the American people have asked us to do. I totally agree with what Mr. Guthrie has said. This is a logistical marvel when something like this occurs. We've seen Florida Department of Emergency Management answer the bell time and time again. The governor has said we need to accomplish this, and DEM gets that job done. And we had a side conversation about, I know there were some concerns. People are like, well, what happens if a hurricane comes? What happens if this happens? And I looked at Kevin Guthrie and I said, you already have a plan, don't you? And he goes, of course we have a plan. You know that we do. This is what Florida does, Mr. President. And so I want to commend you for your leadership and your vision on this. Governor, thank you for all that you've done with your vision and determination. Secretary Noem, we're going to get the bill done so you get the resources you need. See you, sir.
Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Wow. Thank you. You know, I'm waiting, listening to these wonderful words, and they are music to my ears, but I was also wondering how we're doing, because I know this is prime time. It shows that I care about you, because I'm here, and I probably should be there, but we do care. Thank you very much. James, please. We're all happy now, James.
Yeah. Well, I can speak on behalf of all of our sheriffs, state law enforcement, our police chiefs. We are going to continue to make arrests, our pedals to the metal, as many as we can. We want to fill this place up. The governor and Kevin have shown they can build bridges in 3 days, so why not some detention facilities? Hopefully there's more to come. And you really kind of were the inspiration for this. We like the idea of reopening the original Alcatraz. I don't know if that can happen or not, but we thought, hey, we've got our own natural Alcatraz in the middle of the Everglades. Great runway, great perimeter, so let's make it happen. In Florida, we walk the walk, and we will deliver for all of you. Thank you.
Well, I heard you were responsible for the locational pick, and you cannot have picked a better location. I said, whoever the hell made this choice, I know you take it a little heat from some environmental groups, but I take it all the time, and that's an honor. But I heard you were very responsible for that choice, and that was a big choice. Thank you very much. Great job, James. Thank you. Do you want to finish over here, and then we'll go over here? We'll go back and celebrate the big, beautiful bill that you just got passed. You sure that's right? Right, Brian? Yeah, all right. Wow, good. He's doing a good job.
Right.
Wow.
Mr. President, first of all, I just want to say how grateful we are that you're back here in your home state of Florida. You've been doing an amazing job, not only at our border, but around the world, keeping this country safe and Americans. We are grateful for your leadership. God had a plan for us, and it was Donald Trump. So thank you for that. As a member of the Immigration Board and as the Commissioner of Agriculture of this state, I've been happy to help lead with the governor and the rest of the cabinet on this issue. We're very proud, Secretary Noem's here today and others, to represent not only the United States in our efforts to make this commitment to keep our citizens safe, but we're going to continue in Florida to remove the barriers to have your vision come true of a safe United States. We're going to get these illegals, the illegal criminals out of this state, and we really appreciate you and your leadership in this effort. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. You're doing a great job, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joe Gruder, State Senator. I'm a member of your Homeland Security Advisory Council, your Vice Chairman. Thank you for that appointment. And thank you for coming back to Florida and everything that you do. Every single day you are delivering on the promises that you promised to us at all of the events you've done throughout the years, but specifically this last campaign. You deserve all the credit for everything, and you are surrounding yourself with incredible people like Secretary Noem, Stephen Miller, and just like your big, beautiful bill here in Florida, there was a lot of commotion about our immigration bill. And we had 3 B's in that: beds, badges, and bad guys. And this goes right along with our beds and the resources. And I give the governor, Ron DeSantis, a lot of credit for stepping up and making sure that we all work together, because at the end of the day, even if sometimes there are skirmishes, as a result of the back and forth, we ended up with a better bill, and we all win. And what we're doing here in Florida hopefully will happen all across the country. Your leadership is amazing. Keep up the great work, and just know that Florida loves President Donald J. Trump.
No, thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate it for a long time. Appreciate it. By the way, Okeechobee is something that we did together also, and that was a lot of money spent. I hope it was well spent. I know we did a Rolls-Royce job, but it's a lot of money that we spent out there together. And how is it going?
You can delegate that to us, because we move faster than the Army Corps.
Good.
So we will finish that reservoir.
Good.
If you delegate it to us, I'll get it done and much quicker.
Oh, I would do that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, let me ask myself permission. Permission granted. Go ahead, get the thing, get it complete. You want to do that?
All right, we're gonna go talk to the Army Corps then after this.
Good. You can move faster, actually. Please.
Thank you. Sir, just first on behalf of the men and women of ICE, we just want to thank you for allowing us to do our job again. You know, your vision and under Secretary Noem's leadership, this is what the American people want. And I hope that you see great results of what we're doing out there every day, getting the worst of the worst out of our communities. Because of you and Secretary Noem, I have the privilege to lead one of the most premier and the finest law enforcement agencies that we do have in the United States. And the men and women of HSI and ERO Miami, women of HSI and ERO Miami, doing incredible work like you highlighted. And with the governor in the state of Florida.
For ICE Euro, here for the Euro, here for the director for ICE Euro, here for the director.
And we all win. And what we're doing here in Florida hopefully will happen all across the country. Your leadership is amazing. Keep up the great work, and just know that Florida loves President Donald J. Trump.
No, thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate it for a long time. Appreciate it. By the way, Okeechobee is something that we did together also, and that was a lot of money spent. I hope it was well spent. I know we did a Rolls-Royce job, but it's a lot of money that we spent out there together. And
That's one of the most premier and the finest law enforcement agencies that we do have in the United States. And the men.
Thank you very much for this facility. Looking forward to continue the great work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve, would you like to say something? Our star.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say on a personal note, getting to watch what you've done over the last 5 months to deliver on a 50-year hope and dream of the American people to secure the border. When President Trump came into office on January 20th, the United States had endured the largest wave of illegal immigration in human history. Not just American history, human history. And within just a few days, President Trump, through his strength, leadership, diplomacy, and vision, achieved the most secure border anyone in the world has ever seen. When we recently went overseas to the NATO summit, I had senior staff in foreign governments come up to me and ask me how he achieved the Trump miracle on his border and could that be replicated in their countries. For individuals who don't work in this space, to have 0 successful illegal entries in an entire month should be an impossible achievement. There's a 2,000-mile border with one of the poorest countries in the world, and you have open travel from 150 countries into Central America and South America. There are 2 billion people in the world that would economically benefit from illegally coming to the United States. And through the deployment of the military, through the deployment of novel legal and diplomatic tools, through the building of physical infrastructure, through the empowering of ICE and Border Patrol, and the entire federal law enforcement apparatus, President Trump achieved absolute border security. And now, once this legislation is passed, he will be able to make that with those resources permanent. Watching what you've done, sir, has been one of the honors of a lifetime. I'm proud to be able to play any role in it. And what President Trump is going to achieve next with the resources in this bill will make America safer, stronger, freer, more sovereign, and more prosperous than it has ever been before. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Steve. Oh, thank you. And the bill is going to be great for Ron. It's going to be great for Florida, too. A lot of set-asides for Florida, some of the things that you wanted to do. And so it's great news to hear that it was approved. Do you want to take a few questions, Ron? We'll take a few questions from these. Yeah, please, go ahead. Yeah.
President. Thank you, Mr. President. Given the likelihood of the One Big Beautiful Bill passing, and we look forward to the success of this facility here, how many more facilities like this do you feel that the country needs in order to enact your agenda of mass deportations?
Well, I think we'd like to see them in many states, really, many states. This one, I know Ron's doing a second one, at least a second one, and probably a couple of more. And, you know, at some point, they might morph into a system where you're going to keep it for a long time. You know, it's not that far away from jails that take years to build, and money is spent and wasted. And, you know, like the railway that they have in California that costs like 40 times more than it was supposed to cost. The same things happens with prisons. You look at this in a short period of time. Ron, James, and some of that really worked on it along with our people. They did this in less than a week. And you look at it, it's incredible. The incredible thing is picking the site, because the site was one of the most natural sites. It might be as good as the real Alcatraz site. You know, it could be. Well, that's a spooky one too, isn't it? That's a tough site. But so I think it could last as long as they want to have it. I mean, you may morph this into, you know, your prison system, frankly, which I know you always need, unfortunately. Always need, unfortunately.
The border, he didn't like my questions, but the number one question that I heard from people in responding to my video was, why hasn't he been arrested yet? You know, obviously you guys are cleaning up the mess that was made deliberately for the past 4 years, and so people want accountability. It's great to see that the border is secured, and it's great to see the state level cooperation, but I guess I would ask you, why hasn't he been held accountable, or anybody really?
Well, you know, pardons were given out by to many people, and they shouldn't have been given out. Like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs was given a pardon because they destroyed all of the information from 2 years of hearings, and they should be arrested, but they were given pardons. Was he given a pardon, Mayorkas? Was he not?
I don't believe so.
Well, I'd take a look at that one, because what he did is it's beyond incompetence. Something had to be done. Now, with that being said, he took orders. Now, with that being said, he took
7B plus
bill in the Senate. What is your message to those holdouts?
Well, I just heard that about the Senate, and the bill just passed, and it tells you there's something for everyone. I mean, it's a great bill. There is something for everyone, and I think it's going to go very nicely in the House. Actually, I think will be easier in the House than it was in the Senate.
And just to be clear, on the Medicaid cuts, you've promised not to cut Medicaid, said this is all just targeting waste, fraud, and abuse. Are you saying that the estimated 11.8 million people who could lose their health coverage, that is all waste, fraud, and abuse?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's going to be a very much smaller number than that, and that number will be waste, fraud, and abuse. And if you look, they took a much more liberal stance on the Medicaid situation than they could have. They had a tough stance and a weak stance. They took not a very strong stance on that to start off, and it's waste, fraud, and abuse, and everybody wants that covered.
What number is that? What analysis are you seeing?
I'm not seeing a number, but I know it's much less than the number you gave. And we really were very, very cognizant of three things. Social Security, we're going to take care of it beautifully. Medicare and Medicaid. And we are going to save it, whereas the Democrats are going to, you won't have it. They will destroy Medicare and Medicaid, and they have to because their numbers don't work. So it's not going to happen. They're the ones that have destroyed Medicare. They have made it so bad already, they're going to make it a lot worse. But now we'll be in charge, so we're going to have no problem with Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yeah.
Claire Gall with Wink News in Fort Myers. What is your direction to ICE when it comes to arresting farm workers here illegally, other workers in industries that are pretty critical to Florida's economy?
Yeah. Well, we're very much cognizant of that, and as you know, I won the farmers by 92%, and I'm not going to be abandoning my farmers. We were strong on the borders, but we're also strong for the farmers and for others in the hotel industry, et cetera. You know, we have similar situations. And Christy and I, and we'll be working with Ron and a lot of the states. We're going to work something where the farmers can be responsible for some of the people that have, and they have people, Ron, for 10, 15 years that they know very well. We're going to put them responsible and we're going to issue a form of a card or document, and the farmer's going to be responsible for these people. They're not going to have citizenship, but they'll be working, they'll be paying taxes. We need to get our farmers the people they need, otherwise our farmers aren't going to be able to do their land. You know, it was tried once before, many, many years ago, where there was a very strong guy, and he got everybody out, and every farm almost in the country, but every farm in California, every farm in Iowa, almost all the farms went bankrupt. They had nobody to work, and we don't want to have that situation. So we're going to work it. We're going to put our farmers and others in charge of the people that they have under them. They know the people, and I think it's going to work out really well. We're going to take care of our farmer, but we're going to get the criminals out, okay? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Mr. President, how do you respond to critics who fear that a 3,000-bed detention center and the waste that could produce will pollute the surrounding federal protected land, including land that both administrations have invested billions of dollars in restoring?
Well, I was one of those that invested billions of dollars and hundreds of millions of dollars right here in the Meadowlands, but in the Everglades, and the Meadowlands too in New York. If you look at what we did up there, speaking of the Meadowlands, a lot of places like this, but this is a very unique one. One thing I'll say about this land, we'll be gone 1,000,000 years and this land is still going to be here. It's not going to be much different. You'll have the water moccasins, you'll have the alligators. You may not have people, but you're going to have all those animals. They're going to be around, and you got plenty of them out here. I think it was a brilliant choice, and I think almost anybody in his or her right mind would say this was a brilliant choice. I give the governor a lot of credit for using this piece of land. And in addition to that, it's on top of something that was already developed. It's an airport. You know, you have the runways, you have so it's already been developed. So it's not like you're dropping dirt right into the thing. There was zero movement of that. That was done many years ago because the airport's very old, but it was an abandoned railroad, an abandoned airport. And frankly, it's like perfect. And you can do expansion on this site substantially without doing anything. So the people, I heard them complaining about the Everglades. There's no, I don't think you've done anything to the Everglades. I think you're just enhancing it. This was already here. How long has the airport been here?
Decades.
Many decades, yeah.
And they have, Kevin, all these guys, you know, have a waste plan, like the wastewater gets trucked out, potable water gets, literally, they have, even our DOT has put things up in case there's any seepage, which we don't. So you are literally doing this on concrete that's already here. So I don't think those are valid and even good faith criticisms, because it's not going to impact the Everglades at all. President's been a champion, we've been a champion, really changed the game in Florida on it. I think it's just people don't want to see illegal immigrants deported, and that's their ideology, and they have a right to that. But illegal immigration's unpopular, so they know that they're going to have less effect trying to do it. So they're going to try, oh, well, no, it's just about the Everglades. But really, I think a lot of those people, they just don't want to see illegals deported. Because if you actually hear everyone's here, you obviously know there's zero land that's being disturbed.
Well, you know, when we talk about popularity, though, I will say I ran on the issue of illegals, and we have to get them out. And I won 82% on that issue. So I think that they may not like certain aspects of it, but ultimately they do not want them in their country. And if this is a part of a use, but I think from an environmental standpoint, it's incredible. In fact, when we landed that very big, heavy plane today, they came out and checked it fairly. I think they want the president to be able to land it.
All right, we do have some storms making their way into the viewing area, some that could be pretty strong. We even have some severe thunderstorm warnings around the area. So meteorologist Brad Panovich is here. Brad, talk about what we're seeing tonight right now.
Yeah, so we saw a warning briefly, just expired actually here about a minute ago, but that line of storms has not stopped. Just because it's not severe doesn't mean the storms are going away. Remember, severe criteria is 1-inch diameter hail and 58-mile-per-hour winds. But as we look at the radar, we got a pretty nasty line of showers and storms coming in from the west. And while there has been some gusty winds, the two main concerns that we want to worry about this evening are going to be lightning. Number one, lightning is always a danger. Make sure you stay indoors, stay off plugged-in devices out of the shower or the tub, but also flash flooding. Flash flooding is going to increasingly become an issue because we're seeing some of the same areas getting hit again, in particular the mountains. We've seen a couple flash flood warnings there. You see one for Wilkes County and a very small section of northern Ashe County. That is until 2:15 a.m. So just be aware of that in the mountains. We have seen several waves of rain, and if I widen this out, I'll turn off the warnings just briefly here so you could see kind of the overall map. You could see that's a pretty good line of showers and storms coming in from the west. Now, what I want to show you real quickly is our Dallas camera, because it's showing that line moving in, and you can see, look at that downpour. I mean, that is coming right at the camera. So our Dallas camera is up there at 1,450 feet over in Gaston County, just north of Gastonia, and so we're looking due west toward what looks like a pretty nasty line of storms heading right towards the camera. So, Colin, for the evening hours, we kind of expected this after 8 o'clock was going to be the most active time. These could go into the wee hours of the morning, so just a heads up if you have kids or pets who are sensitive to that overnight thunder, which will be pretty loud, just be prepared. It could be one of those nights tonight.
All right, and you were talking about the potential for these severe storms. I mean, July 4th, a couple of days away. Yeah. Can we expect some of these things, this type of atmosphere to linger into the holiday?
Here's the good news. So these storms will be with us tonight into early tomorrow, but this is actually a rare cold front, and I don't want you to get too excited because it's not going to get super cold. So think of summer cold front. This will be drier air. So what this is going to do, Colin, is it's going to stabilize everything. It's still going to be pretty hot. I mean, I'm talking low 90s for the 4th, but it will be noticeably less humid and low chance of rain, which is almost unheard of in early July. So you're looking at temperatures maybe 91 to 92 for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, even Sunday. And dew points in the low 60s, upper 50s. I mean, that's going to feel pretty good, especially compared to last year at this time when it was 98 on the 4th and it was 101 on the 5th. So far cry from last year. So the good news, the storms, we're going to get them out of the way early this week and set the stage for just a beautiful holiday weekend.
All right, awesome. Any other impacts that we should be aware? I mean, obviously those overnight storms are sometimes the worst to deal with because a lot of folks are sleeping. So I know you say have 3 different ways to get those alerts, have that weather radio as well. Anything else we should be cognizant of?
The good news is I'm not expecting widespread severe, so it's not going to be one of those nights where we're super worried about damaging winds, tornadoes, hail. I think the biggest concern will be the lightning and then localized flooding. I should really emphasize the localized nature. I mean, very minor flooding here and there. This is just going to be a loud overnight. These will be loud storms. And one of the things we've seen recently, we've seen a lot of lightning strikes lately, Colin. So the thing I always tell people is people think they have those surge protectors and all these things that are going to protect your house. They really aren't. I mean, if your house gets hit by lightning, it's going to cause damage. So if you want to save devices like TVs, computers, might be a good idea just to unplug them tonight. They disconnect them from the wall. That way, if there is a shock to the electrical system, it won't fry that device. And so if you do think you were hit by lightning or your house got struck, it's always a good idea to make sure check the attic there's not smoke. Make sure those smoke detectors are up to date, because oftentimes we'll see these kind of hit the attic and then it'll kind of get into the insulation and sit there and smolder, and that's how we get house fires from these lightning strikes.
Okay. Also, another thing that I obviously think about when we get inundated with water is power outages, right?
Yeah.
System outages. Last night, our lights went on and off in Fort Mill, and thankfully went right back on. That might be something that folks could see tonight as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because lightning strike to the power grid anywhere, or just one tree comes down the wrong spot, you could see the power go out. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Maybe just keep the phone charged up, flashlight near the bed tonight. And if you do have a sump pump like in your crawl space or something that's reliant on electricity, that might be something to keep in mind. It's always a good idea to back up power for those things, because you don't want your basement or your crawl space to fill up with water once that pump goes out.
We've got some events in Uptown Charlotte, and I know that you also help some of the teams in the area. The Knights have a game tonight. I'm expecting that this could impact their game as well.
Well, hopefully they'll get it done.
Okay.
I think it was a 7:04 start.
Yes.
So
Yes.
typically with that pitch clock now, they tend to get done by 9 o'clock.
Okay.
If not sooner. So one thing I'll tell you, if they do get a delay, the game's over, because it's probably going to be past the 5th. It'll be an official game.
Yeah.
But yeah, lightning within 8 miles of the stadium, in some cases 10 miles, depending on the venue. That's usually what will cause a delay first, and then obviously heavy rain at the stadium. So yeah, tonight's game, hopefully they'll get it in quickly, and then tomorrow night we'll keep an eye on the pop-up storms again. They'll be around, not as numerous as tonight. That'll be something to watch. And then for the Sky Show, the big fireworks display, which remember is on July 3rd, not July 4th. That's Thursday night. They should have no issues at all. So if you're going uptown for the 3rd, for those fireworks, I think we're going to have perfect weather in uptown. Like I said, rare to see some great weather this year for the 4th.
Yeah, and normally, I don't know if you've built this out already, the parameters you give to us sometimes in terms of timing, right, as when these storms will hit us. It seems like in the 9 o'clock hour, that'll be the time we need to really be watching out for.
Yeah, looking at the speed right now, they're moving east at 20, which is not super fast for thunderstorms, so I'll do a storm track here real quickly. And so for the Charlotte metro area, that's going to put it, roughly basically right around 10 to 10:15. So but by 9 o'clock, this is going to be pretty close, and it's probably going to be raining by the time we get to 9:15, 9:30, with the heart of the storms over us by 10. So like I said, this is a late arriving system. Typically we have afternoon and early evening. These are late evening and overnight storms, and because they're being driven more by a cold front, that weak cold front as it is, and not the daytime heating that we typically have in the summer.
Yeah, it's honestly been so nice to have a reprieve. I know it's still hot outside. We've got the cooling centers we've been discussing, obviously in Gastonia, that situation. So the cooling centers will stay open. It has to be 90 or above, which it sounds like we're not going to get out of that type of mode anytime soon.
Yeah, what's interesting, tomorrow, I mean, there's a chance we could only at 88 or 89.
Oh wow, okay.
Which would break our streak. We've had 13 days in a row of 90 plus, which is the longest stretch since 2022. If we don't hit 90 tomorrow, we'll break the streak. We'll start another one though on Thursday. That's why tomorrow, if we just happen to touch 90, this streak could go on for 20, 25 days, because beyond there, we'll be in the 90s again. So part of me says, let's just hit 90 tomorrow. If it's going to be this hot, let's just set a streak, and get a record going here. To put us in the top 10 longest 90-degree streaks, we just have to get to 18, which we certainly could do if we hit 90 tomorrow, because the forecast for the weekend into next week is low to mid-90s for the next 10 days.
Yeah. I'll tell you, what's really hard is having that 95-plus heat and then having the humidity in the 70s as well. So dew points, what are we looking at the next few days? Because, watching the fireworks outside, it's fun.
Yeah.
Not as fun, though, when you have that air that you can wear.
So this is the good news, and I don't think Jeb's got the graphic here. Pull this up from Weather One. So this is our dew point forecast. This is probably the best I've seen a summer dew point forecast in a long time. So the air you can wear, we jokingly call 70 and above, Colin. Anytime you can get dew points in the mid or lower 60s in the summer, I know that that's still humid technically, but for summer, that feels really good. And there's a chance Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we could see low 60s, upper 50s. That's like unheard of. That's a dry heat. That's a legitimate dry heat. So once the sun goes down, you actually could have some cooler weather for once the sun goes down. So for fireworks, obviously the sunsets this week, I mean, right today, the sunset is 8:42. So you're looking at about an 8:40 sunset, but twilight takes about 30 to 40 minutes. So you're looking at 9:30-ish, 9:40-ish for most fireworks displays in the Carolinas. And if that's an hour after sunset, and you have dew points in the low 60s, that's actually going to feel pretty good for this time of the year.
Yeah, so crazy to see that we're starting July with those type of dew points.
Yeah.
Really does help us. So anything else, and I know we're trying to exhaust just this weather segment to make sure that we get all the information squeezed out of you here, Brad. But anything else that we should be kind of cognizant of? We always tell people maybe download the app, right? So you can stay weather aware as well. What else are you tracking outside of just the lightning and the storms?
That's about it tonight for the storms moving through. And it's going to be nice because once we get past this, like I said, we'll get into a little bit of break and the afternoon storms go away for a while. The only other thing we're watching, and it's really not going to impact us directly or even the coast, but there is a potential for tropical development in Florida or off the southeast coast. So if you're going to Florida for the 4th and maybe next week, it's a big beach time of year. Some people might head up on Saturday and do the week stay, which is typical Saturday to Saturday. Just keep an eye on the weather down in Florida and on the coast. While I don't anticipate wind or rain at the coast, with an offshore system, you got to worry about rip currents.
Yes.
So something to think about if you're going to the beach this week into next week. Rip currents could be a big deal. So pay attention to those lifeguards and those flags that tell you what the conditions are like. And if you're not a great swimmer, don't go in beyond knee deep. It's just better. And go to a guarded beach if you can, because it's just better in case there are rescues needed. And we always tell people with those rip currents, don't fight them. Just float out, swim parallel to the coast, and then come back in.
Yeah, and it can be a tough thing, right? Because you want to try and swim, but you have to fight that urge. We were just at the coast earlier this weekend, and we were trying to watch out for those schools of fish, making sure that there weren't any sharks. There's been a lot of shark sightings on Sunset Beach and whatnot. So that warmer weather and those warmer temperatures in the water really does sometimes allude to those sightings. And obviously, the heating of the day, you were kind of talking about that. How does that play into what we're seeing tonight? Because sometimes I talk about some of the storm fuel, that the sun being out in the afternoon, that really does charge up our atmosphere as well, right?
Yeah, so typically, max heating of the day this time of year is anywhere between 4 p.m. and 8 to 9 p.m. because sunset is so late. So that's why we tend to see the storms a little bit later into the evening. But a day like today, the fuel has been abundant out there, and it's not really waning like it typically does when the sun goes down. The bigger story is not the fact that we have a ton of fuel. We've had much higher fuel days for thunderstorms. It's the trigger. In this case, it's the front. The front is the thing. It's like the match. If you think about fuel as gasoline, you can have a whole bunch of that and just have a spark and start some big fires. But in this case, we don't have a ton of fuel, but we have a really big spark. We have basically a blowtorch because that is what the front is. It's going to allow to trigger a bunch of storms real quickly. So we're making up for the lack of fuel with a better trigger mechanism, which is the front. And that's why if you have a front coming in the middle of the night, you can still get storms because you just need a little bit of lift, like a push up in the atmosphere. And the front is basically like a giant snowplow in the atmosphere. It pushes the air and causes it to rise, and that's all you need this time of year.
Okay. And I've seen some lawns already getting kind of brown. I know we're probably not in drought territory just yet, but this type of rain does help us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, where are we with that, with the drought monitor?
So what's interesting is, I think people don't realize that, you can dry out really quickly this time of year. You need an inch of rain per week to keep everything lush. So if you don't get an inch of rain per week, you could run into some big time problems. And especially this time of year because the sun angle is so high and it is so hot, evaporation rates are through the roof. So you're sucking moisture out of that ground quicker than it can get replenished if you don't get an inch of rain per week. So we can go to drought very quickly. We call them flash droughts. It's like the version of flash flooding when you get too much rain too quickly. You dry out for a week or two with this intense heat, you get a flash drought because the soil dries out quickly. Remember, your plants are all using water in the soil. That's why you need an inch of rain per week. And then you factor in evaporation and you factor in sun angle. All these things are just pulling moisture out of the ground. So you got to replenish it. You can't just get rain and then not get some for 2 weeks and think, okay, we're good to go. There's nowhere to store that water. It's gone the second the plants use it up.
Well, you told us the other night, too, if you are on a beach, right, and you're seeing a thunderstorm, you're seeing clouds, 30 miles from that thunderstorm, you can be struck by lightning.
Yeah, we've tracked lightning strikes up to 30 miles, and in some cases, we've seen cloud-to-cloud strike, which I think is the record, is like 60 miles in Oklahoma. But typically, 20 miles is kind of the range we worry about.
Okay.
But that's why we say when thunder roars, go indoors, because if you can hear the thunder, you're certainly way too close to get hit. If you can't hear the thunder but see the lightning, especially at night. Now, remember, we joked about this. There's no such thing as heat lightning. At night, you see lightning you would never see during the day because it's dark out, right? It's like seeing the stars. They're up there during the day. You just don't see them. And a lot of this lightning is there and during the day. You just don't see it because it's dark. The thing is that light travels much farther than sound. So you're always going to see the lightning before you hear it. So you know if you hear it, it's pretty close. But at the beach, you can see those storms way offshore because they're 30, 40, 50,000 feet tall. So it's like a mountain offshore, and there's lightning in the top of that storm, so you could see that from a really far distance.
Yeah, it really is a striking scene. Well, hey, thank you so much, Brad. I know you're still kind of tracking the forecast that we will have, fine-tuning things for the 11 o'clock news. If you need to break in, definitely let us know. It's great to have your expertise. But again, watch out, folks. We're watching this Doppler radar. And again, it seems like these storms making their way shouldn't be seen into the metro until maybe around 10 o'clock, you said?
Yeah, I'd say at the earliest. Earliest could be 9:30, but 10 o'clock looks to be like when the main line will be over Charlotte.
Okay, all right. And I know a lot of folks try to head indoors as soon as possible when this type of rain hits. So
absolutely,
be aware. Watch Brad again at 11 o'clock tonight, and download WCNC Plus, also our mobile app, because our team of meteorologists, they make sure to update that forecast, and that is on the app and the radar as well, hourly, if not every other minute or so. Brad, thanks so much for your time, man.
Absolutely.
We'll talk to you a little bit as well. We'll go back to the press conference at Alligator Alcatraz down in Florida.
The Meadowlands, too, in New York, if you look at what we did up there, speaking of the Meadowlands, a lot of places like this, but this is a very unique one. One thing I'll say about this land, we'll be gone a million years and this land is still going to be here. It's not going to be much different. You'll have the water moccasins, you'll have the alligators. You may not have people, but you're going to have all those animals. They're going to be around, and you got plenty of them out here. I think it was a brilliant choice, and I think almost anybody in his or her right mind would say this was a brilliant choice. I give the governor a lot of credit for using this piece of land. And in addition to that, it's on top of something that was already developed. It's an airport. You know, you have the runways, you have so it's already been developed. So it's not like you're dropping dirt right into the thing. There was zero movement of that. That was done many years ago because the airport's very old, but it was an abandoned railroad, an abandoned airport. And frankly, it's like perfect. And you can do expansion on this site substantially without doing anything. So the people, I heard them complaining about the Everglades. There's no, I don't think you've done anything to the Everglades. I think you're just enhancing it. This was already here. How long has the airport been here?
Decades.
Many decades, yeah.
And they have, Kevin, all these guys, have a waste plan, like the wastewater gets trucked out, potable water gets, literally, they have, even our DOT has put things up in case there's any seepage, which we don't. So you are literally doing this on concrete that's already here. So I don't think those are valid and even good faith criticisms, because it's not going to impact the Everglades at all. President's been a champion. We've been a champion, really changed the game in Florida on it. I think it's just people don't want to see illegal immigrants deported, and that's their ideology, and they have a right to that. But illegal immigration's unpopular, so they know that they're going to have less effect trying to do it. So they're going to try, oh, well, no, it's just about the Everglades. But really, I think a lot of those people, they just don't want to see illegals deported. Because if you actually hear everyone's here, you obviously know there's zero land that's being disturbed.
Well, when we talk about popularity, though, I will say I ran on the issue of illegals, and we have to get them out. And I won 82% on that issue. So I think that they may not like certain aspects of it, but ultimately they do not want them in their country. And if this is a part of a use. But I think from an environmental standpoint, it's incredible. In fact, when we landed that very big, heavy plane today, they came out and checked it fairly. I think they want the president to be able to land on a piece of concrete that's not going to go 6 feet underground. And they checked it. They came back and they said, this thing is really solid. So it's been there a long time. It's going to be here a long time. And it was a great choice of a site. Thank you. Yes, please. Brian, go ahead.
Yes, sir. The people of Syria were recently seen on the streets waving American flags, chanting Trump, Trump, Trump. They're so appreciative of the economic sanctions that was lifted on that country, giving them a little bit of hope for prosperity. You want to comment on that?
Well, they're great people, and the man that is leading them has a reputation. He was the head of some pretty tough organizations, and a lot of people criticized me for that. I said, well, what are we going to do, take him out of a day school, a country day school? It's going to be, by nature, I would think, Ron, they'll be pretty tough, and he is pretty tough, but I think I met him, spent a lot of time with him, good guy. I took off the sanctions because if I didn't do that, they wouldn't have had a chance. And Syria has a chance. The people are great. They work hard. They're very smart. It used to be a place of professionals, accountants and lawyers and doctors and high academic credentials in that part of the world. And I think it's going to work out great. I took off the sanctions, and they were very appreciative. They were shocked, but they were very appreciative. We're giving them a chance at survival. With the sanctions, it couldn't have worked. Thank you.
Mr. President, your beloved New York City. Your beloved New York City may well be led by a communist soon, Zorhan Mandami, who in his nomination speech said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zorhan Mandami.
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, we don't need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I'm going to be watching over him very carefully on behalf of the nation. We send him money. We send him all the things that he needs to run a government. And by the way, they get about 3 times what you get, Ron. If you look at the per capita, Florida gets 1/3 of what New York gets in terms of the numbers. Why don't you give us those numbers?
Yeah, well,
because that's what we should send him.
Yeah, well, like sometimes people say Florida gets more because they count Social Security recipients, but that's not money to the state. Those are seniors that live here. If they moved to North Carolina, you could count it there. So it has no interaction with the state government. They get more on the city and state governments than we get.
Right, substantially. We're going to be watching that very carefully, and a lot of people are saying he's here illegally. We're going to look at everything, and ideally. He's going to turn out to be much less than a communist. But right now, he's a communist. That's not a socialist. I've always said, we will not have socialism in this country. In the speeches, I said, well, what? They skipped socialism. And you get a lot of them like that. And you see AOC, she's out there with her, bad IQ. She's out there ranting and raving about how wonderful he is. And look, so far he's winning. He still has a race to win, but so far he's winning, and he has an advantage as a Democrat in New York City. I was there a long time ago, and it was a long time since a Republican won the city, but you would think that a Republican would be able to win. Or you have a good independent running, Mayor Adams, who's a very good person. I helped him out a little bit. He had a problem, and he was unfairly hurt over this question. He made a statement to the effect that this is terrible. New York City can't have all these immigrants come in, and like he was indicted the following day. And I said, that was a phony indictment, and it was a phony indictment. That was a Biden indictment. I said, don't feel bad. I got indicted 5 times every time you opened your mouth. That was a bad group. That was a very dangerous group, I will tell you. These were not nice people. That was the only thing they could do. They had no policy. They had no skill. They had no anything. But they were very good at that. They were vicious, vicious, horrible people. Thank you very much. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Anna Giratelli with Washington Examiner. Governor DeSantis has proposed using National Guard, deputizing them as immigration judges to get through this massive backlog of people in the immigration court. Would you be open to that?
Yes, he has my approval. Okay. That wasn't too hard to get, was it, Ron? He didn't even have to ask me, James. You didn't even need James to ask me. He has my approval, okay? Good. I also like what he's doing in Okeechobee. He has my approval for that, too. I don't know how we work that out, but we'll work it out.
We'll follow up.
Go ahead. Please.
President Trump, Jake Stofan with Action News Jax from up in Jacksonville. There's some talk about a facility similar to this up in Camp Blanding. Has that been approved by DHS? If not, what's the timeline? When could we see ground break on that?
Well, I'll ask Ron or James to talk about it. Do you want to mention it, James?
The overarching plan, I think the secretary has said she supports the whole plan, so you guys are going to keep going. Yeah.
So, Mr. President, just specifically, the response for proposals is out for that today. It closes, I can't even remember what day of the week it is, but it closes on Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Then we will do notice to proceed. So I would say right after our wonderful Independence Day, we will be starting construction there at that facility.
You're going to have another big runway there, too.
That's great. Wow. Well, I love these runways. It's very convenient, I must say. Having a runway is a nice thing. Today, you don't get runways approved, I will tell you. It's tough to get a runway. Although in the age of Trump, you get them approved fast, We're approving massive electrical bins, whether you call them bins, but big electrical facilities for all of the factories and the AI that's coming in. They're going to build their own electric. They're going to be really, they're going to be made into electrical providers. They're going to have a lot left over. They'll put it into the grid. I think, they're going to end up doing so much. They'll put it into the grid. Won't even cost anything from their standpoint. But so we have a lot of that happening. We get approvals fast. So, but I was just saying, runways are hard to get, but we'll get them now. But in the past, I would say over the past 30, 40 years, when you can get a runway, that was considered gold. Okay, please, go ahead. Go ahead. Sure. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
President Trump, Laverne McGee, News 6 Orlando. You have fulfilled several campaign promises along with the help of Governor Ron DeSantis. What is the next campaign promise that you plan to fulfill to the American people?
So we have turned this country around in less than 6 months. And when I was away, and I was telling Ron, I was telling some others, I've said it a little publicly, I guess, but I met a lot of very important people. The King of Saudi Arabia, I was there 2 weeks ago, and Qatar, the leader of Qatar, who's great, and the leader of UAE, who's great. These are very substantial people, very smart people, and good people. And all three of them said essentially the same thing, along with many other people, because I just left NATO. NATO's we took it up to 5%. Nobody can believe that one run. That would be hard, but nobody believes that. What happened in NATO, over $1 trillion a year from like nothing. It was an honor. But every leader said that a year ago, this country was dead. They had no confidence in the United States. They really felt it was a dead country, and it was some bad things were going to happen. But they used the term, it was a dead country, and now they said you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're the hottest country in the world right now. And we turned it around fast. I thought it would take longer than this. We turned it around fast. Some of it was psychology, and we had to know how good we were. But others was getting rid of rules, regulations, and all of the things that I got rid of already. I signed more executive orders than anybody in history, times like 3 or 4. And I got rid of just one. I got rid of the other night. You buy a house, they have a faucet in the house, Joe, and the faucet, the water doesn't come out. They have a restrictor. You can't, in areas where you have so much water, they don't know what to do with it. You have a shower head, the shower doesn't, you think it's not working. It is working. The water's dripping out. And that's no good for me. I like this hair nice and, I like that hair nice and wet. Takes you have to stand in the shower for 20 minutes before you get the soap out of your hair. And I put a thing in, and it sounds funny, but it's really not. It's horrible. And
all right, that'll be it for our stream here at from 7 to 9 on WCNC Plus inside our live Impact News studio. Had a lot of news, but obviously we're still tracking those storms for you. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich will have all the updates for you on the 11 o'clock news as those storms roll through and to Charlotte right now. Thanks for joining us here on WCNC Plus.